Hey everyone, I'm Chef Dennis, and welcome to the third annual I'm sorry, slurring there, virtual bloggers conference live on Google Plus and YouTube, and we're periscoping it right now or meerkatting it, I should say. And we are
Meerkat.
here, meerkat, yes, to talk about WordPress and why you should be using a WordPress blog. If you use a WordPress blog, questions you might have about it. So you want to ask some questions. If you have things that you've been wondering about, now's a good time to ask. We have a great panel of people here to discuss things with you, and we're going to be talking about our favorite WordPress options and things to do and not to do. So let me introduce our crew right now. And first off, we have Christopher Howes, and he's coming to us. And Christopher, you are the CEO of Wheel Media, and you're in Canada.
I am. I'm in Cornwall, Ontario right now.
Ooh. So we've actually got half a Canadian blog here, or a session here with you and Carolyn. So
Some Canadian influence. That's what this panel needs.
yeah, we need to break out which beer is it? The Moosehead or the? Been too long.
Molson? Canadian?
Molson. There we go. Molson. What was the real big cans?
Well, they all come in big cans. They're called tall boys or king cans, but yeah, they got some really big ones, like 2.5 beer in a can.
Yeah, and isn't the beer a higher alcohol content in Canada too?
It is, and it's tastier and it's better for you too.
And it needs to be consumed across the Canadian border though for all the full effects.
We put it on our cereal. It's so healthy.
You know, I've heard that. I've heard that. Makes you guys super strong and healthy.
That's why everybody in Canada is so nice. They're always drinking beer.
Yeah, we're always drunk.
That's why you're always wishing a good day, eh? Okay. All right. Well, next to you, I have Greg Trujillo, and Greg is here from Orlando. So you're right down the road from me in the Sunshine State, and no beer for you right now.
No, not right now. I'm opting out of happy hour for the moment, but immediately after this, I'm going to make sure that I catch up. And you're right, I'm pretty much right down the street. I can kind of see Chef out my window if I have a pair of binoculars.
Yeah, a real strong pair.
Yes.
But anyway, well, thanks for joining us today, and we're going to move right across. And then I have Dustin Stout coming to us from California. And
Hey.
nice Sunshine State over there for you too, and thanks for joining us, and
Absolutely.
hope your little ones are feeling better real soon. I appreciate it.
Me too.
It's rough when they're sick because you'd almost rather have it yourself just not to put them through it, and it's easier on you.
Yeah, we're hoping it's just a little bit of a bug, a little bit of a tummy bug, and it'll be through. But never fun when it's happening.
No, and he did christen your car last night too, right?
Oh yeah, we got a brand new 2015 Ford Escape, and still had that new car smell. Well, needless to say, that is not the dominant smell anymore.
Oh well, new car smells overrated.
Oh yeah.
And then moving on down the line, I have Carolyn Capern. And how you doing, Carolyn?
Hey, Dennis. Great to be here, representing both the Canadian contingent and the Orlando contingent at the same time.
Yes. I'm happy to hear that, and I'm glad that you're in town. And I'm going to unfortunately be leaving town in a few more days, so when I come back, we'll have to catch up. And if I have if I start to get withdrawal symptoms for leaving Florida, I'll hang out with you guys. You can show me the sky.
Yes, exactly. Show you the afternoon rain at about 3:15.
The biblical rain, as I like to call it.
You can set your watch by it.
Last year it rained an awful lot, though. So.
Oh yeah.
I'm all right missing that part of it. But so we're here to talk about WordPress. If you've got questions, we'll hopefully have answers for you. And right now we're going to dive into it, and I'm going to let you guys talk about kind of the options that are out there. WordPress is not the only option, but it might be the best one for you, and guys can talk about why and what and other options there may be, and just talk amongst yourselves, and let's get this going, and I'll bring up questions as soon as we get them.
Sounds good. I guess I'll I'll jump in and start the conversation. Guys, I know that all of us work in marketing companies. All of us work with WordPress, I think, as a preference. I know I started actually out on Blogger myself, but I migrated over to WordPress after only about, I think it was about 3 years or so into my blogging experience, and the difference was just night and day. But let's actually back it up, because I think a lot of people, when they're looking to start a blog in the first place, they wind up looking at options like Medium and Tumblr and other places like that, and don't necessarily think about a self-hosted blog. So what do you guys think about those other options for bloggers, and why would you suggest WordPress over them?
Well, I started actually on a blogging platform that's no longer around, and I think that kind of dictates why I tend to recommend WordPress over anything else, is because blogging platforms can come and go. These free platforms like Blogger or Tumblr. I started on Posterous. Anybody remember Posterous? Yeah, so a few people. Nobody in the audience probably remembers.
That's preposterous, Dustin.
Yeah. Well, Posterous was one of those platforms that was really attractive. It was very well designed. It had this promise of being able to connect all your social networks so that when you blog, you can automatically feed it out. It was basically more than just a blogging platform. It was a social media management tool for being able to push out updates across multiple social networks. It was.
You can see why that's attractive.
Right. Yeah, and it was Hootsuite before Hootsuite existed, and so I was extremely drawn to it. Started blogging there, and before too long, I met Michael Hyatt and started following him really closely. And he did a talk, and it was really inspiring to me to really start taking blogging seriously rather than just doing it normal. And so, thankfully, I actually moved over to self-hosted WordPress thanks to a guy named John Saddington, who further influenced me to go that route, kind of take control of my own things for a number of reasons that he wrote about. But it's a good thing that I did, because I think probably about 6 months after I did that, Posterous was acquired by Twitter, began changing drastically, and before too long they shut it down and it was gone. And so to me, that's sort of the biggest deterrent for anybody who's looking to build a long-term blog. If you're in it for the long term, look at these sites like Blogger or Tumblr or Typepad. They may have been around for a while, but at any moment, we've seen Google, as much as I love them, they've canned great long-standing products like that. And they change one thing, and guess what? You're at the mercy of that network, because they own everything. They own the property. You're simply renting the space. So that's sort of the biggest danger for me. And while it might be a great solution for somebody who just doesn't want to spend money, if it's just a hobby, or if it's just for fun or for experimentation, it might be great. But for someone who's trying to build a business or build a long-term following or audience or platform, I always encourage the self-hosted solution of WordPress. And for me, WordPress is the best choice because of the extensive use. I mean, I think the last I checked, it was over 20% of the internet is hosted, is using WordPress. 20% of the websites on the internet, something like that, close to there. It might even be more at this point because it's been a year or so. But I mean, on top of that, because so many sites are using it, because it's open source software, it's constantly being worked on. There's thousands, if not millions, of plugins that you can add on to get special features. There's millions of themes out there that you can instantly plug in and play. The diversity of the marketplace, giving you access to things that you can add to your site, making it easy for a brand new person to just plug and play, makes WordPress, to me, all the more powerful for everyone.
Preach it. So true. But let's take a step back there, because WordPress isn't all self-hosted. That's just an option within WordPress, right? Christopher, you want to speak to that?
Well, yeah, there's WordPress.com, there's WordPress.org. Now, WordPress.com is the one that's hosted by WordPress, which gets you back to the situation that Dustin was just talking about. It's like Blogger. It's not self-hosted, so you're sort of at the mercy of somebody else. So WordPress.org is the one where you can go in, you can download it to your own hosting option. Now that seems to be, when we get to talk about which platform is better for people and for businesses, that always seems to be the biggest struggle or the biggest challenge, is for somebody to step into that hosting, to go and get themselves hosting and take control of that themselves. It's kind of scary for people, which is why they tend to go with like the Blogger platform or something like that, Tumblr even. So it's getting them past that, and I mean the other thing too is if you start off on the WordPress.com, on WordPress's version, the hosted version, to try to go to your own version afterward is another nightmare. It's just, so when you start, when you first begin, you need, the most important thing is to look ahead. Where do you want to be with that? Are you going to be a blogger forever, or are you going to want to turn that into a website? Because Blogger will not allow you to do that. You're limited on the themes with Blogger and plugins because they don't have their, what they're called, what, gadgets or something. So anyway, it's
something like that.
Yeah, so you're limited in that way, but WordPress will let you expand. I mean, there's a lot of, it did originally start as a blogging platform, but now people are using it for a website. It makes beautiful websites, you know, that has a blog component too. So that's, you know, that's the question you have to ask yourself is, where is this going to be in, you know, even 6 months? You know, just to try to start off on Blogger or Tumblr and then say I'm going to, you know, move to my own self-hosted WordPress. You're talking about moving your traffic over. You're talking about moving your audience over. It's a lot of work.
Yeah. So I guess the big thing is what's the long term? You know, if it's a long term project, then yeah, I'd say WordPress is probably the best solution for anyone out there who wants to make sure that they own everything, have the widest pond to sort of fish in for additions, themes, plugins, add-ons, documentation, help. I mean, there are countless forums out there. Just you know, people helping people. I learned almost everything I know about web design in a forum about WordPress for a theme forum that unfortunately the theme no longer exists. Standard theme. I'm actually using the coffee cup from the company that made it. May 8-bit rest in pieces. But yeah, I learned a lot about WordPress and design development all from the community, the WordPress community, and that's a powerful thing.
And one of the other questions too, the other big question too is monetization. If you're going to want to monetize, I mean, Blogger's all right if you're going to limit yourself to AdWords, but when you go to WordPress, you have things like WooCommerce. And WooCommerce is powerful. You may not need it today, but 6 months down the road, you're going to be glad that you have that option.
Yep.
I think most bloggers eventually get to the point where they want to make a little money from all the effort. Yeah, exactly. Now, how does one go about setting up a WordPress blog properly? Greg, you're totally a pro in this area.
Well, as Dustin and Christopher were saying, you know, generally you'd go to WordPress.org and download the files yourself. But I've been seeing increasing numbers of one-click installations inside hosting companies' platforms when you finally buy your hosting package. And that can make it really easy for you when you're in your admin area of your hosting. You just click the WordPress button and it installs the WordPress files for you directly. Otherwise, you're probably going to want to, like they said, download the files and make sure that you understand your FTP, your file transfer protocols, and what kind of app that you would use for that. Personally, I suggest FileZilla. It's one of the easiest ones to use. It's also freeware, and you just drag the files that you've downloaded from WordPress.com into your hosting through FTP, and you start to set it up there. You go to your URL, and it's a very quick and easy setup. It asks you what your site name is, to connect it to a database, and then you're on your way. Downloading and installing new themes and plugins is really a piece of cake that you can pretty much do in the admin area of WordPress itself, as well as other websites. Just doing a quick Google search for WordPress themes. There's Theme Forest, which is a really great site for paid themes that people really put a lot of time and effort in order to make really great themes that are kind of a one-size-fits-all.
So this word theme keeps popping up. Let's talk about what is a theme and how do you pick a good one? How do you tell the difference between a good theme and a bad theme? Greg, Jason T. Weiser is out there in the audience. He's challenging you to tell Dustin why Genesis sucks. So you better tell us what it is and why it sucks.
Oh, this will be a battle royal if we start that conversation.
Well, Genesis is a blanket theme. They call it a framework, is really what it's called, and it really just provides base functionality and structure for your website, and they have themes that run off of the Genesis framework that you can install and play very nicely with that and provide you a lot of really great options. Now, for the average user, using a framework like Genesis and using the themes that they provide is probably a logical way to go. But quite honestly, for me myself, I custom develop my own framework and make themes based off of that framework for clients. But there's really not too much wrong with Genesis, Jason. For most people, I think that's a great way to go. But really, themes are the way your website functions and looks, the overall layout and the style of your website. The way to pick a good one is really just decide what kind of content you want on your website, what you're looking for, what you want to communicate, and how you want to communicate to people, and look through themes and see which one fits that model the best. There's so many out there, you can almost find exactly what you're looking for with very little effort.
Either of you guys want to pile on to the themes conversation? Dustin, you're a designer by preference. What would you advise people to look for in picking their theme, just from the design standpoint for blogging?
Yeah, one of the things that I always advise clients of is to, if they are going to find a theme from a place like Theme Forest or even Woo Themes, or there's a lot of theme repositories out there where designers and developers can create these themes and people can buy them. The biggest problem I have with that is sort of similar to the same problem I had when Standard Theme disappeared. I built everything on this theme, thinking that they're going to be around for a while, hoping that they support it, and it turns out that they weren't really going to be around for as long as I was. The reason I like themes like Genesis is because the Genesis is built by a company that is going to be around for a very long time. Copyblogger Media is the company that builds it. They've got a huge track record of creating things of the highest quality, which is very important because you can find a theme in Theme Forest that hasn't been updated in a year and maybe not been coded to standards, and there's a lot of variables that you just don't know whether or not you can trust these authors entirely. So for me, it's a matter of trust and knowing that it's being built and being continued to be updated in the long haul, because the problem with technology is it changes so rapidly. You can buy a theme that looks great, functions great today, and then a year down the road the author gave up on it, and you can't get any support through Theme Forest anymore because he's gone. But a company like Copyblogger Media is there to stay because they have a huge reputation, they have a huge stake in making sure that their product performs and continues to grow. And they have a number of other products now that they're supporting. So for me, I tend to gear people towards the bigger theme shops. Woo Themes even is a better one because they are building a business model themselves on these themes, and they're not they're not a repository of anybody and everybody who wants to throw something in there. But I have used plenty of Theme Forest themes for clients. Most times they work out. There have been a few nightmares. So for me, it's all about minimizing the risk. And if you're going to buy something and use it on your site, and if your site means a lot to you, you want to make sure that you vet out these authors and these theme makers to make sure that they're building you something solid. if you're not hiring a designer or developer to do it for you.
Boy, Greg, you don't have anything to say about depreciated coding standards, do you?
Oh, well, I'll get to that in a second, but to touch on what Dustin was saying is, yes, you definitely want to vet these themes. I've used a few themes from ThemeForest for clients as well, and you see it and it looks beautiful and it looks like it works exactly the way you want it to, but then when you actually download it and install it, the admin area is a complete nightmare. It doesn't.
Yeah, it always looks great on the demo page, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, the demo page looks fantastic, and then you start putting your content in there, and you're like, wait, this isn't quite exactly what I thought it was. Make sure when you're looking at themes, if there's any comment areas, look at the comments, look at the support questions. What are people having problems with? That's the biggest thing, because any theme is going to have some sort of problems, or people are going to have some sort of questions to them. Nothing's perfect. So look at those support questions and see if these people are having problems that you don't want to deal with. If it's minor things that really don't pertain to the content that you're trying to put into your theme, then full steam ahead. As far as depreciated code goes, yes, coding it's updating so fast nowadays. New releases of different types of coding standards are coming out all the time. Different coding functions that make life easier. Even in WordPress itself, every time WordPress gets an update, there's usually either depreciated code, which means that it's going to stop working soon, or new coding libraries or functions that are put into WordPress as well that allow more powerful functionality to be created with minimal effort.
Right, and even more importantly, it's the security updates, right?
Yes.
So one of the biggest problems with open source software and the most popular software out there, WordPress, is that hackers are always going to go after the biggest fish in the pond.
Right.
So WordPress, very good at trying to keep on top of security loopholes and stuff. Not the same thing can't be said about all theme makers. So, updates are crucial to me. That's why, I really press people on finding an author that's reliable, updating frequently, and staying up to standards.
Everything you're saying, too, can be mirrored for plugins, too. Every single thing you said. It's the very same thing when we start talking about plugins.
Yep.
Absolutely. Before we dive into plugins, which is a big topic, I've got there's two people here who are asking about different theme networks, iThemes and Headway themes. I'm not familiar particularly with either of those. Are any of you guys?
I've heard of iThemes. I don't believe I've heard of Headway themes. From what I can remember, it seems to me like iThemes has been around for a while, but I'd have to double check and take a look. Headway, I don't know much about.
Honestly, I don't really know of either of them.
The theme world moves so fast. It's hard to keep up with all of them. I think ultimately at the end of the day, though, the same tips basically apply. Look at the reviews, look at the ratings, be really vigilant in doing your homework, and when in doubt, ask a developer.
Yeah, and the same goes for iPhone apps. It's really the same wisdom when you're dealing well, not necessarily with iPhone apps, but Android apps. Anybody can make an Android app, right? Because it's open software. So if you're going to download something onto your phone, you probably want to make sure it's built by someone who knows what they're doing, who probably has a little bit of credibility, and who seems trustworthy.
Here's a good tip from Vin Brown. Investigate what a child theme is and ensure that you use one when you start out building your WordPress website, which will ensure that your design tweaks are not lost when the theme needs to be updated. So what's the difference between a regular theme and a child theme?
You want to take that, Greg, or you want me to take it?
Sure, go ahead, Dustin.
Cool. So the easiest way to understand it, I think, is in WordPress, you're able to create what's called child themes. So you have the theme that you've maybe gotten from ThemeForest, or maybe you bought Genesis theme from StudioPress, and you want to make modifications to it. You want to customize it a little bit. And you don't want to do that on the actual theme because themes get updated, and as soon as it's updated, you lose everything. So it kind of goes to whatever its default is in that update. So what you do is you create a child theme. So it's another theme, but basically what the child theme is doing is it's saying take everything from this parent theme and apply it to this one, except for these customizations. So you're usually just modifying a style sheet in most cases, or maybe the functions sheet. Maybe you want to get rid of some functions and replace it with other ones, or replace some colors with some different colors, or fonts with other fonts. So it allows you to make modifications to the core theme with that, and be able to maintain them if that core theme is ever updated. That about cover it, Greg?
Oh yeah, that's exactly right. And I've seen a lot of nightmares from clients that we've brought on, and they've had their developers build it, or their previous developers build it, and they didn't use child themes, and they go into their admin area and they just update it, and all of a sudden they're calling me on the phone saying, hey, my theme broke, and there's no way to get it back to what they had except for to recode it and actually do it properly, setting up that child theme and making sure everything works right. It's very important when it comes to modification. If you're going to be modifying the theme, you definitely do not want to modify the theme directly. That's just spells trouble.
So here's another good question from the audience. Sherry's asking what our top 3 recommended hosting companies are. I know that Greg and I certainly have our favorites, so let's go down the line, and all 3 of you say what your preferences are. Greg?
Well, I'm going to start with a local to Orlando hosting company called HostDime. They might not be the fastest server, although they do really have very fast servers, but their support is absolutely top-notch. Also, full disclosure, they do provide a pretty much free VPS to Carolyn and myself for our needs. So, although they do not pay us, so they're not a client, but I do really enjoy them. Aside from them, I really do like InMotion hosting, and they have no connection to CT Social at all. But they have great support, and their servers I find are really top-notch for speed.
Dustin?
I'm a big fan of, top 3. So currently, my website, Dustin.tv, which is sort of the biggest property that I run at the moment, besides Wheel Media and Warfare plugins, I have it hosted on certified hosting. So I actually know the owner. She's a great gal. I have a relationship with them, and they have kind of set me up on a very great deal for some of the advocacy and some help that I help them out with on their blog and their social. But I've never had a problem. Support has been super responsive, and to me, that's sort of the biggest thing is the support. I've had clients who've been on other hosting platforms and just had nightmares. I myself have been through probably 5 different hosts and had just nightmare stories. But certified hosting in the, I think, 2 years now that I've been on there, never had a problem. Uptime has been, in most months, 100%, which is huge. Site's been down very few times. But I also recommend my buddy Jason Weiser, who's in the audience, has his own hosting, but it's sort of a private kind of thing. I don't know if he's telling too many people about it, but I always go to Jason for the things that are over my head, and he has some great hosting. And the only one that I could, in good conscience, recommend would be managed hosting solutions. Studio Press, again, has its own managed hosting solution for WordPress. And it's for those who don't want to deal with a lot of the technicalities that come with self-hosting. I often recommend that to them because it just takes more off of their plate, so they can focus on the content and whatever their goals are.
And Christopher, how about you?
Well, how about I'm not going to give you three? I'll give you one. To be honest and truthful, Wheel Media has been with HostGator for over 10 years. And in that 10 years, I can honestly say, and I don't want this to show up on some sort of sponsored video somewhere, but in the 10 years, I've never had a problem with the support. They've always been there when I've needed them. The chat window is very easy. As far as and the other thing too is the packages that HostGator does offer. Some of them are very affordable. They go down as far as maybe $5 a month if you just have the single site, all the way up to, I mean, there's some that are significantly more expensive. Now, I think more importantly than the one I would most recommend is the one I would least recommend. And I would suggest avoiding GoDaddy hosting at all costs. That is, I'm not going to give you top three. I'll give you one favorite and one to stay away from.
And let's talk about that for a minute, because GoDaddy is definitely the big dog in this fight. I mean, everybody that, like, I mean, of our clients, I can think of very few of them that are not on GoDaddy or that didn't start on GoDaddy before they worked with us. So let's talk about their pros and cons. Since they're your least favorite, why don't you hit some of the cons?
Well, the biggest con is the support. Getting support from them is troublesome. Times, going to surprise you, it's costly. They'll hit you up with a fee to do something. And the most important problem with them is getting away from them. If you ever want to leave GoDaddy, it is a nightmare. A nightmare. Even to have another hosting company that says, oh no, we can do the transfer for you, it will still be a nightmare.
Yeah, a lot of hosts today, they will have, they'll use a management system, a back-end management system called cPanel. And with cPanel, you can basically take everything that you have from your current host, take it up, move it right over to another host, no problem. With GoDaddy, it's a complete nightmare.
Greg, what are your thoughts?
Well, I agree with the support. The support on GoDaddy is horrible. Not only is it horrible, but they always try to upsell you on everything. We have a client that their website receives a moderate amount of traffic, and their package, the plan that they have, should be more than enough computing power to handle the amount of traffic in the website that they have. But GoDaddy's constantly sending them notifications that they're using up more resources than that they're paying for, and that they need to upgrade their plan. They're always just trying to nickel and dime everybody out of anything that they need, anything that they can get, really. So buyer beware for GoDaddy. If you want to spend some money on things that you don't necessarily need and get terrible support, that is definitely the hosting for you.
So we want to rebrand it Go Away Daddy then.
Yes, I think so. Yeah, I mean, cheap, but not necessarily a good factor. Here's another hosting relevant question, actually, that's pretty good. Thoughts on importance of the locality of hosting. Locating, HostTime, like Greg mentioned, is located here in Orlando, and we like that. But they're also an international hosting company. So what do you guys think are the pros and cons of getting hosting with a local company versus one in another country?
Mind if I take this one?
Go for it.
All right. We have a number of international clients. One such client is a shipping company in Hong Kong. A lot of the content that they are serving is specific to an Asian audience. Now, GoDaddy, or not GoDaddy, excuse me, HostGator is located in the United States. Their servers are in the United States. In international instances, if your client is in a specific area and they're serving information to that specific area, getting hosting in that country or region is your best bet, hands down. Now, finding a good hosting provider, you are going to have to take your time to do that. There's a lot of them that are resellers that will, they appear to be the hosting company, but really they're simply located, let's say, in Singapore, for example. Their office is in Singapore, but they're reselling you hosting from GoDaddy in the United States. So it's not gonna it's not going to meet your needs. So definitely take your time, really investigate. Call the office, look at the numbers. But yeah, don't.
Ask where their servers are, right? Their servers.
Exactly. That's where you want to know, is where the server is serving the information from. And that is a mistake that was learned. I mean, like I said, 10 years in hosting clients, it's a mistake that was learned. I thought I was buying an international hosting in the country. Turns out it wasn't. So you live and you learn.
That's always the truth of this industry, isn't it? Both from the social media side, the content marketing side, and the development side. Everything's a lesson. So let's move on and talk plugins, because I know that's...
Oh, wait a minute. If I could one more thing I have to mention. We have a Saudi client, and a problem that we had come up with there was browsers. The information was because their lettering works from the other side. It goes the other way. So in serving up that information, it's often better to have a server in that country.
Yeah,
if you're serving to those people. Yeah.
Okay. Plugins. Everybody's favorite reason to use WordPress. These are the things that keep your website doing all the different things that you want it to do. They should really do an ad campaign. There's a plugin for that. It really seems to be the truth in a lot of cases. I mean, Dustin, I know you're a big advocate of lots of different plugins, not least of which is the wonderful social warfare one. But what are some of the other ones that you've liked, and why have you liked working with plugins within WordPress?
Well, I think it should be said firstly that plugins are great, but like anything, in moderation. Too many plugins can absolutely destroy a site. Load time wise, for every plugin that you add, you're adding load time to, or you're adding more things that your server has to do and perform when your site is loaded. So it can bog down your website's load time. With more plugins come more potential problems. I'm actually writing a blog post for our Warfare Plugins blog titled "Mo Plugins, Mo Problems." Because the thing with plugins, they're all developed by different people. Because of this, they may use code that may be conflicting with one another, or they may conflict with your theme. So the more plugins you have, the more potential conflicts and problems that you have. Then there's also the issue, just like with themes, are they updating it regularly? If they're not, then you might be working on two different sets of coding standards, and those plugins, it could wreak havoc if you're not smart about what plugins you use. That being said, I am a big fan of plugins, but again, doing the due diligence to make sure you have a great plugin to do that feature, and not having more than you absolutely need. But I'm a huge fan of a number of plugins. Yoast SEO has been very good to me in helping me with some of the SEO type stuff, making sure that everything's SEO optimized. Although I know a number of SEOs, our CEO over there, Chris included, is not a huge fan of Yoast SEO, but it can be used wisely, and I'm sure he could speak to that a little more. I'm a big fan of CoSchedule, which is a web app as well as a WordPress plugin that allows you to basically see a content scheduling calendar, so you can schedule your blog posts out and kind of manage your calendar. And mostly, I think I'm a huge fan of the one that I helped to co-create with my buddy Jason Weiser, who's in the audience, and our other buddy Nick Cardot, who is serving our country, or training right now to serve our country in the military. We created a little WordPress plugin that was pretty much built out of a huge need. And if you've worked on WordPress in any capacity over the last few years, you've probably at some point looked for a social sharing plugin to add social sharing buttons and features to your site. And if you're like most of us, you probably got really frustrated in the process because most social sharing plugins are too bulky. They bog your site down. They kill the load time. They're not beautiful. Most of them are really ugly, actually. They can just ruin a lot of things on your site from a function standpoint. They're buggy, not well maintained. So we set out to solve our own problems that we were having with these, and all three of us were sort of working on this this idea of creating our own social sharing plugin, and I had some ideas for the design and the functionality, making sure they're beautiful and responsive. And so I kind of designed them up one day, and I said to Nick, I was like, what would it take to make this for my blog? And it was selfishly, because I was redesigning my blog at the time. And he goes, not too hard. And he started working on it. We started working on it together. I was designing the front end. He was making sure it all worked. And before too long, our buddy Jason had some ideas about behind-the-scenes functionality, hiding a Pinterest-optimized image and optimizing the Pinterest description so that when people hit the buttons, they're getting the most optimized share instead of hoping that they do that themselves. So yeah, big fan of having plugins that solve problems, real problems, and that's sort of what we did with social warfare, as we solved our own problem, and it's worked.
Which is fantastic, and I mean, I know you've got lots of cheerleaders, especially here on Plus. Dennis was saying earlier in the green room that Peg Fitzpatrick and Rebecca Radice were singing its praises earlier.
Yeah, they're great.
But Greg, I know you've got lots of thoughts on the plugins. We've had plenty of horror stories with that one, haven't we? With seeing people with tons and tons of plugins just building their site.
That's usually what ends up happening. We'll pick up a client, and their website's basically built out of nothing but plugins. You have like 30 to 35 plugins, and it's really amazing that their website even loads in the first place.
Oh, that's nothing compared to some of the sites I've seen. I've had one site in particular. We've seen it through our support system. A person sent us a screenshot, and they had 96 plugins. 96. That's 30-something of which needed an update.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of those plugins could have easily been removed, probably weren't being used. That's a site recently that we were working on rebuilding. We took them from 30 plugins down to 15, and I still think 5 of them they're looking at for using in the future, not actually using right at the moment. But the biggest issue aside from speed is the conflicts, as Dustin said. You can turn on a plugin, and if their coding conflicts with your website, that can bring your whole site down, or portions of your site may not work. It's a really big problem. You really want to make sure that these plugins are maintained. And on a WordPress site itself, when you're looking at the plugins, they have a nice handy little chart on the right-hand side that actually tells you the last time it was updated, if it's compatible with the latest version of WordPress. It's a really good guide to go by before you decide to install a plugin into your website. And once again, look at the support questions. People are having a lot of problems with it. You probably want to steer clear because you might have those same problems. But at the same time, if you don't see a lot of people griping about it, it might be good to go. One of the go ahead, Karen.
No, I was just going to say one of the things we've noticed is exactly that load time impact. Though, how does the coding conflicts play into that?
Well, it really just depends on the type of conflict that's created. The most common one that I see is when the code uses similar variable names or same variable names, any kind of anything that's used to store information. If they use the same exact name, it usually creates a very big conflict. Some plugins are just coded sloppy, very sloppy, and can create infinite loops, which will never allow your website to load. But speaking of load time, one of my favorite plugins, or some of my favorite plugins, actually directly solve issues of load time, like W3 Total Cache is a good plugin for reducing load time. And
I'm a big fan of that one too.
Yeah. And one thing that people really don't think about when they're building their website and they're blogging is their images. Your images probably take up a lot of space on your server, and they take a lot of time to download. Images that are large, especially images that are supposed to stretch all the way across the screen, they're going to take a long time to download, especially when you're on mobile. And it's very important to think about the user experience on your website. And for that, I like EWWW Image Optimizer. That is a fantastic plugin that does something that's called lossless compression, which means that it will actually reduce the file size of your image without reducing the quality of your image. So you can still have high quality images that look very professional at a much lower size without having to do the optimization yourself.
Well, another thing about that lossless compression, I've actually used that same plugin too, big fan. But the other thing about the lossless is it makes sure it maintains your metadata, which is a huge deal when it comes to SEO and how search engines are interpreting those images. A lot of other plugins out there that consider themselves lossy, which means they're stripping some of that metadata to further shrink the file size. And you always want to make sure whatever plugin or tool or app, I actually use a desktop app to reduce file sizes, but make sure it's always lossless. So you're not losing quality and you're not losing any of that valuable metadata.
That SEO component is definitely a big deal that a lot of bloggers don't necessarily think about when they're first getting started, but eventually you want your blog to be found. So I know a lot of us definitely turn to Yoast SEO, and Christopher Dustin mentioned you weren't a fan, so I'd definitely like to hear you give the pros and cons, because we've used it extensively, so I'm curious.
I wouldn't say I'm not a fan of it. I just I started using all-in-one SEO, and I always have. And you know how when you get used to using something and you're familiar with it, you just don't want to change. It worked, you're afraid it's worked for me for years, and part of the SEO is, if it's not broke, you don't fix it. So, but I'll be 100% honest with you, Wheel Media uses Yoast SEO. It does. We use it on the website now, so I can't tell you I'm not a fan of it because...
That's because I'm in charge of everything.
But getting back to the plugins, anybody starting their WordPress plugin, you don't need, as you guys said, you don't need a lot of plugins. I would suggest maybe 5 to start with. The first one you're going to need is an SEO plugin, whether it's all-in-one SEO or Yoast. I would only recommend one of those 2. I can't really speak to any of the other ones. The second thing you're going to need is some sort of, to help with your content marketing and your management. So again, like Dustin said, the co-schedule. That's been really big for us at Wheel Media. It works well. Simple plugin. Then
it's also a free, if you're not at the point where you can start paying $10 a month for co-schedule, there is a calendar plugin out there called, I think it's just Editorial Calendar, WordPress Editorial Calendar. Completely free, gives you a calendar to work from, and I've heard great things. Actually, I think Peg Fitzpatrick uses it. So
that's the one I started using. That's the one I had on Praxis, remember? That's the standard one, the early version before co-schedule. But anyway, moving on, the plugins, social media plugin, definitely Social Warfare. That would be the other one that you would need.
We're not paying him to say that, by the way.
No, not at all. No, I'm just thinking in terms of ease of use. I mean, you don't want to download a whole bunch of plugins. You want ones that work. You want ones that you're going to get support for. And these are ones that I can recommend. The other one, might be. I don't know, maybe a favicon, all-in-one favicon or something. Because I know if you go to HostGator and get their hosting, you end up with that little crocodile or alligator in the corner, which may not coincide with your brand. So I know all-in-one, or is it all-in-one favicon or something? Anyway, do a search under the plugins for a favicon plugin. Like Greg and Dustin said, check your reviews, check how many times it's been downloaded. And the interesting thing, too, and there it'll always tell you, this was updated so many weeks ago, so many months ago, and you can see how often they are. There'll be ones where it hasn't been updated in 3 years. You want to move past those ones.
Yes, definitely. I would say probably another thing that most bloggers and most websites will wind up wanting to do at some point is some kind of contact form. Mm-hmm. For that, Greg and I typically turn to Contact 7, which is very good. Allows you to customize it with HTML and pretty easy to build even for someone who barely understands HTML like me. I'm about at the point that I can do bold and I can do italics, and that's kind of my limit. But Contact 7, I understand, and it works pretty well. Do you guys have any other favorites?
The official, the Contact Form 7, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Contact Form 7. So if people are searching for it, search for Contact Form 7. I'm a big fan of Contact Form 7 too. However, I've recently switched, probably close to a year ago now. I switched to a form plugin called Ninja Forms. I love Ninja Forms. Just for the ease of use, the customizability of the notifications, you can tell it exactly how to, what happens when somebody hits that. Are they redirected? Are they sent to this? Or are they shown this message? Who gets notified of this contact, and a whole bunch of things. And I mean, the code is clean. It's well maintained. Big fan of Ninja Forms, and they have a bunch of add-ons that really help add to the functionality. PayPal integration, and if you want to be able to style them a little bit better, all kinds of stuff and integrations. Big fan of Ninja Forms.
May need to look into that, actually.
And that reminds me too, the e-commerce aspect. You might want to look into WooCommerce too as another plugin.
That's a big one in that space for people who want to do an online store on their site. Definitely. And you know what else is definitely important for bloggers is comments. WordPress, of course, has its native comment functionality, but I know a lot of people wind up finding that inadequate at some point. They don't want to force people to sign up for their for WordPress in order to comment. Greg, want to tell them about one of our favorites?
Yes. Well, first I want to tell them the dangers of using WordPress comments. What we find when you start to gain traffic in WordPress, you get a lot of bots, a lot of automated programs that actually log in and sign up to your WordPress and start to leave spam comments, and it can get really insane very quickly. First, you start seeing them trickle in, and then by the time you start to really get fed up with it, they could be tens to hundreds a day spam comments, and you just really can't get away from it. And one of the best programs for that I've learned is Akismet. That comes with WordPress, I believe, and you just have to have a WordPress.com account to run that through, and they'll really filter out 99% of those spam comments. But one that I found that really alleviates all of that and does what Carolyn says, doesn't make people sign into your website in order to comment, is the Comments Evolved. It allows not only the WordPress comments, but it also allows social comments, and two of my favorite social sites, Facebook and Google+. People that are logged into Facebook or Google Plus can easily comment directly there on your blog. It gives them an option to share it to their own Facebook or their own Google Plus profiles as well. So not only are they commenting, but they're also sharing your blog to their audience.
It's a nice, very nice double benefit.
And the comments are important. People might say, well, why don't I just turn my comments off? With regards even to your SEO, those comments signify engagement on what's going on that post. And one of the most recent Google updates that didn't happen, Phantom 2, was focused on what they call user-generated content, which speaks directly to comments. And it was basically going after comments that were either irrelevant to the post that was made, or they were several years old and the information there was out of date or was no longer relevant. So it's very important to have those plugins set up that are, skimming through the spam ones, getting rid of those. It's very important for you to review your comments, and the ones that are worthwhile, put in. The ones that are not, remove them, edit them, ask the person to edit their comment. But those comments are important. Don't just turn them off. Good comments are very helpful.
We've seen a lot of bloggers, actually. Greg and I participate regularly in local bloggers conferences here in Orlando. There's a wonderful lady named Bess Auer, who I believe was on one of the earlier sessions, who's organized. She organizes basically quarterly events for bloggers in our community. And at one of the events last year, there was a presenter talking about how she turned off comments on her site because she got so sick of dealing with it and wanted people to engage with her on social media. And Greg and I were sitting there thinking, well, that's all well and good, but what about this stuff that you're talking about? What about people who want to add credibility directly to your page, want to engage with you directly on it. It just seemed a little bit a narrow focus. And I mean, I can appreciate people wanting engagement on social media too, of course, but you don't own social media. It's very much out of your control, right? So
that's true. I have a bit of a different perspective, I think, on commenting systems. I actually wrote a whole blog post about finding the best commenting system for your blog, and on wheelmedia.com, our blog actually used that Comments Evolved, but I decided against it. And for me, it's more or less, when a user's on the site, I want them to make as few decisions as possible. One of the reasons we built social warfare the way that we did with only 5 social networks is to limit the number of options for people. The paradox of choice is a psychological concept that says the more options you give people, the less they actually choose. Extensive studies have been done about this. So you give people 50-some kinds of jelly to choose from, they actually make less purchases. Whereas you give them 5 different kinds of jam to choose from, more purchases are actually made. And so for me, when it comes to a commenting system, so I would rather have them share on social media for my site, because that's where a lot of the active conversation is taking place. And when it comes to commenting, I feel like adding 3 options for them, while it may feel like it's making it simpler for them, it's actually adding options. And so they have to make another decision based on, okay, now which one do I want to leave a comment on? Do I want to log in to discuss, or do I want to log into Facebook, or do I want to log into Google+? So we're forcing them to make more decisions, right? And I always stuck with WordPress native because, I mean, number one, it's dead simple. I mean, if they want to comment, name and email is all they need. And for most times, if they're commenting multiple times, which that's kind of what you want to shoot for, right? It's filled in for them, so they don't really have to fill it in again. The spam comment thing for me, Dustin.tv gets probably 1,000 spam comments a day, regularly. It's not that difficult for me to manage. I mean, I go to the spam comments and I hit delete all, and it's gone. So, yeah, I've always recommended WordPress native because it's simpler. It's one less plugin to worry about conflicts with, and that content that's generated in WordPress comments, you own it. It's in your database. You have it to have and to hold forever until death do you part. And it simplifies the process. So for me, it's always been giving people less decisions to make to get to that engagement. And that's kind of why, that's my perspective on it. But again, it doesn't work for everybody's site. Everybody has different goals, strategies. But for me, it's always been about simplicity, making things dead simple for people.
And I guess since we're moving into the end of our session here, that's a good. I'll steal that as my last tip or last thoughts on WordPress. WordPress is really nice because it gives you that choice. It gives you the ability to control your site's experience better than just about any of the other ones. Certainly better than a very confined platform like a Tumblr or a Medium, for example, which very much define what you can do and when and why. Just gives you the ability to move in almost any direction that you want to. So that's really ultimately the reason that I endorse WordPress as a system for bloggers, for standard company websites, and really whatever. So with that, I'll move down to Christopher. What are your final thoughts or last best tips on WordPress?
Well, definitely. Definitely choose WordPress if you see your online presence expanding and growing beyond just the casual blogger. If you're a gardener, you enjoy sharing some of your gardening stories, maybe Tumblr or Blogger might be ideal for you. Not that WordPress wouldn't be either. But if you're looking to expand your online presence, you need to start with a WordPress. If you're afraid of the hosting option, go to the HostGator, click the little chat button, set aside 15 minutes. Make sure you have your domain name ready, Once you get in there, I believe Dustin mentioned the word cPanel. You'll see your cPanel when you get into your hosting. As Greg mentioned, there's a one-click installation. I believe it's even called one-click in HostGator's cPanel. Is it, Greg? Yeah. So there you go. I mean, it's as simple as that. Take 15 minutes, get yourself on your self-hosted WordPress, run through some of the plugins that we said, and don't look back.
Greg, your last thoughts?
Well, one of the most important things to think about when you are creating your WordPress blog is speed. Speed is very important to people. If it's taking 3 to 6 seconds for your site to load, they might just click the X before they even see anything on your site. So low amounts of plugins like has been discussed here today, and also make sure that you optimize for speed. Get that W3 total cache. Optimize your images, and just look for anything else that you can do. You can go to Google Speed Test. You can actually type in the Google search Google Speed Test and put in your URL, and it'll tell you some of the things that that you need to do, and really just take its instruction and Google search that for WordPress, and most likely there's either a plugin that you can use in the short term to make it happen, or if you have somebody that's a little bit more tech savvy than you are, you might be able to have them help you do a little bit of that speed optimization for your website.
And I'm not going to volunteer Greg, but he is one of the best. And I'm, of course, deeply biased in saying that, but I think a lot of our clients would say so too. Dustin, how about you?
Gosh, final thoughts. Just for anyone starting out on WordPress, just keep it simple. That's the thing I preach more than anything. It's because when you're starting out, it can be so overwhelming to try something new. And for me, the most important thing is that you just get your story started. Get it started. Get it turn blogging. If you're in it for blogging, make blogging a habit. Make writing regularly the priority. Not making the website look pretty. And that sounds weird coming from somebody who's obsessed with design. But forget about the design. Forget about everything else. Forget about plugins. Just make blogging a habit. And then then start to branch out. Get yourself a good theme. Get yourself involved in some WordPress communities or some WordPress forums where you can interact with people and they can kind of walk you through. Or if you have some disposable finances, hire a professional designer developer to walk you through and teach you some of this stuff, if not just do it for you. Because your story matters. What you're building, what you're growing, if you're building it on WordPress and you have dreams for it, it matters. So take it seriously and have fun in the meantime, and don't overwhelm yourself.
I think one of the things we forgot to mention through all this is the mobile ready. WordPress is mobile ready.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh,
We'll get in
yes.
here. We forgot to even mention it. That's one of the biggest advantages right there.
Yes.
Mobile ready.
Definitely. All right, Dennis, back to you.
Well, guys, that was great. It was informative. Carolyn, you did an outstanding job moderating this panel. Thank you so much for all your hard work, and everyone for all your great suggestions and tips on using WordPress. And I think we had a lot of people with good questions, and they learned a lot. So thank you so much for coming on the 3rd annual Virtual Bloggers Conference. And we have one more session left in this conference, and that'll be in an hour at 8 o'clock, and that will be on Circuloscope and Nodex. So I hope to see some people there too. So thanks a lot, and I'll see you soon.
Bye-bye.